Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to episode 153 of the Last Round Podcast. Thank you again for joining us, whether you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Boxing Social, wherever you're at, however you're listening. Thanks again for giving us your time of day or night. Jumping right into it, fight reviews this past Saturday, the 13th of November, from the Sheffield Arena on DAZN. Kiko Martinez becomes the IBF featherweight champion of the world with arguably maybe the upset of the year with a sixth round knockout of former IBF featherweight world champion Kid Galahad. Galahad went down in the final seconds of the fifth round, and then it seemed like within the first 2 seconds of the opening of the sixth round, he just ate that overhand right from Kiko Martinez, and it was good night, Irene. What'd you think about the whole situation there, Mike? And obviously there's going to be a rematch. What do you think happens in the rematch?
You know, looking back at the fight, Kid Galahad was really in control until he got, maybe a little bit too complacent, and just ate that big shot from Kiko Martinez, couldn't recover, was luckily saved by the bell, came back out. And a lot of the time, the corner team will be like, just take your time when you've got somebody hurt. But Kiko just literally just strolled over to the other corner, boom, and just finished him off. It was, kind of, you didn't expect it. I think everybody thought that, with it being a voluntary, Kiko Martinez is a name. He's fought a lot of people in the UK, Carl Frampton, Scott Quigg, Leo Santa Cruz over here. So it's, it would have been a good name to have on your ledger, but I don't think anybody really expected the shock. I think people thought it was a decent matchup. He hadn't just picked some unknown, Eastern European to fight to get that home voluntary win after you win a world title. But yeah, it was, a great performance from Kiko Martinez, probably losing every single second of that fight until he connected with those two right hands. But, that's all that he needed to really to end it. Obviously, like you said, there's a rematch clause, and I think, Kid Galahad will go into that if he decides to take it, because there are rumors that he might have to move up in weight. But, when you look back at the fight, he was really dominating until he kind of just got a little bit lax and got caught. That happens. It's boxing. So I think he'll take the rematch and, probably school him, I would imagine. He'll be on form. He's waited that long to, pick up a world title and then, lose it in his first defense. I'm sure that, he's got to knuckle down and he'll be, 100% concentrated for the rematch.
Yeah, I was just as surprised as you were. I think I think it's fair to say that a lot of fans, a lot of spectators who watched the fight live or who learned of the result after the bout were just as surprised as anybody. I don't think it's a secret that Kiko Martinez came in there as the B-side opponent, C-side opponent, however you want to categorize it. And the expectation for Matchroom and Eddie Hearn was that Kid Galahad get the victory, and then they get to use Kiko Martinez's name on his resume. Oh, Kid Galahad defeated Kiko Martinez. Leo Santa Cruz, Carl Frampton also defeated them, so he's in good company. From the marketing aspect, that's what happens. That's what happens in the fight game. That's what happens, especially in boxing. What do you think about any comparisons to Alexander Povetkin and Dillian White? Is there any comparisons there in terms of how Povetkin caught Dillian White with that uppercut and knocked him out in that first fight? Is there any comparisons between these two bouts?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm obviously just, thinking about the fight off the top of my head. But yeah, Dillian White was, in control. Povetkin probably set that shot up a little bit more because you could see that he kept, throwing to the body, and then eventually changed it up. And Dillian White's, automatic, reflexes was to go to the body again, to thinking that he was going to, block it to the body. Whereas I think, Kiko, maybe he did see that, Galahad wasn't moving his head as much as he could have been because he was, Kid Galahad, he kind of started quickly and then he kind of slowed down a little bit. And that's when he got caught. And I do wonder whether, because he was at home and because he has that reputation of kind of being a very boring fighter that kind of just moves through the gears really, really slowly and picks up a lot of point wins, apart from when he fought Jazza, when he won the title against Jazza Dickinson. I did wonder whether he was, trying to do that. He was kind of trying to fight a little bit more because he wanted to impress that home crowd because he's not a massive ticket seller. So I did wonder whether he was, trying to kind of a bit of a change of style, which obviously, didn't pay off on the night.
No, yeah, it obviously did not pay off on the night. I don't know if you were able to see. I didn't see it, but like after the fifth round, as I mentioned, Kid Galahad had went down towards the final seconds of the fifth round. Do you know what he looked like when he was in the corner in between the fifth and sixth round? Like, I mean, because that's one of the first things that popped into my head was that, okay, well, obviously in the sixth round, in the initial seconds, the first 2, 3, 4 seconds, Kiko Martinez came and like just did 2 or 3 steps and threw that right hand and it was over, and it's like right when that happened, especially at the beginning of the round, I thought to myself, well, what did Galahad look like when he was sitting in the corner in between rounds? Like maybe he looked fine. I don't know. I mean, were you able to see any video footage of when he was in the corner? I mean, I'm thinking about like his trainer. Was a stoppage necessary depending on what he looked like, or did he look fine and they let him out for the 6th and then he got knocked out?
I mean, looking at him in the corner, he looked okay. I'm assuming it was just his legs. You'd have thought he probably would have just got on his bike and danced around the outside of the ring to try to avoid Kiko Martinez. Whereas, yeah, because like you said, Kiko just walked straight over and boom, big right hand, which if you were Galahad, you probably would have expected, the way that he was walking towards you probably be like, okay, like he's going to try and finish me off right now and I need to get on my bike. So I'm assuming that, his legs just weren't there, after the break.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now that you mentioned the legs, his legs were definitely gone because he went down like a sack of potatoes, as they say over here in the United States, from that overhand right. And then you could tell Kiko Martinez, that was one of the moments of his career, puts his arms up, and like he knew, like I did it, I made it. And then, in recent months, he's the second professional fighter from the country of Spain, Spanish fighter, to get a big victory like that, an upset victory. Obviously, a couple months ago, or I don't even know if it's a couple months, maybe last month or within the last month or two, Sandor Martin, also from Spain, got the upset victory over Mikey Garcia, the decision victory. So, the country of Spain right now is on a roll with those two fighters. I mean, and then people were talking about, at least fans online, pundits and all that were saying Kiko Martinez could be one of the best, if not the best fighter out of Spain, Spanish fighters in the history of boxing, which I'm not entirely sure. I'm trying to think of any Spanish fighters. I mean, there doesn't seem like there's any that come to mind. I'm sure there's some out there that I'm forgetting. But I mean, Kiko Martinez has been around for a long time. So maybe it's like the body of work. I don't want to necessarily say he's the best fighter out of Spain ever, because I need to look through the encyclopedia of fighters out of Spain, I guess, and really make logical determination in that regard. But I mean, what do you think? Sandor Martin, Kiko Martinez, the last couple months, Spain is 2-0 in these upset victories.
Yeah, I think, a lot of the time, especially the Mikey one, I think it's just, because, boxing isn't huge in Spain, and obviously DAZN's in Spain. So I think Matchroom are, trying the hardest to use, the Mexican fighters, the Spanish fighters to, bring attention and, draw fans in. And I think some of the fighters, because they don't know these guys, Sandor Martin's not a boxing name to the casual fan. They're getting in there and thinking, this is going to be an easy night's work. And they're jumping up and getting surprised. How many have we had over the last, the last 2 years on Matchroom cards, especially when you had that influx of all the Mexicans coming onto the cards that were fighting under Canelo. and jumping up and surprising, like Josh Warrington, Robbie Davis Jr. So, I think it's definitely a wake-up call for some of the fighters that when they're fighting these lesser-known names, that doesn't mean they're getting in there with a lesser opponent.
We were talking about, obviously we'll touch on it a little later, but we were at the DAZN card in Anaheim, California for Golden Boy between Munguia and Rosado this past weekend. But we were also talking about this fight, and I think I had brought up the notion of Chico Martinez trains in the United States, and Lee Selby, who you've went to go cover when he's out here in Southern California, has mentioned that he comes out to the United States, specifically to Southern California, to get sparring and further training because it's more competitive. There's better sparring available in the United States, especially in Southern California, than there is in the UK. So he comes out here to get, obviously improve his ability. Do you think that has anything to do with Martinez? I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, Galahad was winning the fight up until he didn't. But does that play any type of role in Martinez's win here, his upset victory?
I think sometimes stylistically, sometimes when you watch, a lot of the English fighters, when they get in there with, the South American fighters, the Mexican fighters, I think sometimes stylistically it just doesn't work. I think that Eastern European kind of, upright, kind of rigid style that they sometimes come from the amateurs just doesn't work against, a lot of the, South American fighters, the Mexican fighters. I think that's, that's one of the things that honestly, I think just stylistically, it doesn't match up, in my opinion.
Right. So, I mean, obviously there's going to be a rematch. I think they've already announced that there's a rematch, not officially, but Eddie Hearn, I think Galahad's team, and maybe even Galahad has already said that the rematch, I think he even tweeted it. Galahad tweeted something like that or posted on social media in some regard to that. Who wins the rematch? Is it kind of like a Dillian White Povetkin one where Dillian White comes in and easily gets the win back? Does Galahad do that?
Yeah, in my opinion, yeah, definitely. I think unless he's struggling at the weight or there's something that we don't, behind closed doors that we don't know, but in the first 5 minutes of the fight, the first 5 rounds of the fight, he's winning, comfortably. And then he just makes a mistake and gets caught. It's boxing. You just can't do that. It's combat sports. You make that mistake, you get punished.
Is he going to be like Anthony Joshua, Andy Ruiz too, where Joshua obviously didn't engage too much with Andy Ruiz as he did in the first fight, like in a firefight, and he kind of just boxed from the outside because he knew, like, if I engage with this guy, he's got some pop.
That is interesting because in Galahad's, 28 other fights, you never really seen him get hit flush because of the Brendan Ingle style, the Ingle gym style, like Billy Joe Saunders, kind of like Nazim. Nazim used to get hit a little bit because of his, very flamboyant style, but, they were very good, at switch hitting, very good with the feet, very good at maneuvering like Billy Joe Saunders. So it will be interesting to see because, that was a bad knockout. So it just depends, how he is mentally. Is he going to be a little bit fragile coming back into the rematch? But you listen to his interviews and stuff like that, he comes across like a fairly confident guy.
Yeah.
I think he'd be good. He's surrounded by an experienced team and, he wants it. If you watch the interview or if you listen to the boxing life story that he did with Trish Dixon, he comes across very well on there, and you can see he kind of understands and knows the business.
Right.
And I think he'll come back, and I think he'll school, if not stop, Kiko, to be honest.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think Galahad takes it in the rematch, but you never know. Martinez, with this win and him being a world champion now in the division, might give him a boost of confidence, and he might come out. It's happened. It's happened before. Sometimes people just have somebody's number in a way where, like, even though he was losing the fight, they always find openings. Like, I'll be able to find him. You never know. But I agree. I think Galahad would still be the favorite in the rematch. So I'm assuming it'll happen within the next maybe 4 months, Matchroom's going to try to close this turnaround time as quickly as they can to put Galahad back in the win column and get him back with that title. Also on the card, Alicia Bumgarner also gets the upset, I guess, as you can categorize it. The 4th round TKO over Terry Harper. Bumgarner becomes a WBC and IBO Unified Super Featherweight World Champion. You picked Bumgarner. I know you and Sky Sports' Andy Clark, who was our guest last week here on the last round, touched on this fight. And you made your case on that episode with Andy Clark that Bumgarner was actually you felt that she would take the win. That like, you know what, I think she's going to take it. And then I believe Andy, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Andy wasn't necessarily on the same boat, but he can understand. I think he mentioned that he wasn't too familiar with Bumgarner, so that was mostly why he was kind of leaning towards Harper. But when it actually happened, what'd you think, and what was your reaction?
I thought it would have taken her a little bit of time to settle in, but I think from the first round, you could see that she dominated her. Going in, my thoughts beforehand was that Terry Harper was just going to be too weak. I didn't think she was strong enough. She's very like a pitter-patty style, a bit more of an amateur style where, Alicia Bumgarner I thought was just going to really just walk her down and just be too big, too strong, too powerful. And that tended to be the case. And you could see early on that she was super confident that she was going to catch her. And then she did. She got her in the first round, and Terry, you could see, was kind of like, kind of shocked by how powerful she was. And then after that, she was a little bit hesitant. And then, Alicia just kind of walked her down and eventually, caught her with that unbelievable knockout. Great work by the referee. I think everybody's kind of said that on like all podcasts and all social media. She caught her and she was out, stood up really, just out on her feet. And luckily, Alicia came in to hit her again, but the referee kind of grabbed her, hugged her, and, called it off there and then. And, hopefully Terry lives to fight another day. So,
she was out on her feet, right? Is that what you think?
Yeah, she was out, just kind of stood up, like kind of facing to the side. And then, Alicia, the fight hadn't been called. So, rightly, she was kind of like, okay, I'm going to whack her again. And luckily the referee was nearby and, acted very quickly and kind of jumped and kind of smothered her. So Alicia couldn't, hit her again. I do wonder though, like Terry Harper, just her style and the way that she is. I just don't know if she loves boxing. I don't know. I do wonder whether we'll see her come back.
Oh, really? You're going that far to make that kind of prediction? Really?
I mean, there's just something about the way that she talks. Like, she quit boxing. She was kind of brought back in by a trainer. And then just, she didn't perform too well against Natasha Jonas, could have lost that fight. Obviously this fight, she was knocked out, standing up. And if she does come back, I think she'll take a lot of time off.
Right.
I know she had a lot of time off before this fight because of the hand injury, and that may have played something into it. But I don't know. It's just something about her when you hear her in interviews and you watch her style from the very first bell. She was very hesitant, and it's always like she just goes through the fight and just does enough to win. So we'll see. She sells tickets. She's got a good following over in the UK. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she loves boxing, and maybe it's just her personality. She's not like crazy over the top when she talks. I've never met her, so I don't know. But that's just kind of the feeling you get when you kind of watch her.
Right. I mean, possibly. I think I would disagree. I don't get that feeling from her that she would just retire or kind of, I guess, quote unquote, quit boxing. But I mean, you could be right. It's not that I don't see your reasoning behind it, but I don't think she would. But kind of touching on the stoppage, how she was out on her feet and then the referee jumped in and stopped it, recognizing like, hey, okay, she's done. Like she's, I mean, how often do we see? It's very rare to see somebody essentially knocked out on their feet.
Especially in the middle of the ring, against the ropes sometimes, because the ropes keep them up. But she was in the middle of the ring, yeah. Right.
That's very, very rare. But it's like, in a way, it's interesting to see because you're just like, oh, wow, that's crazy how the body reacts like that. Like you're still vertical, but you're out in a sense. So big credit to the referee. I know referees, especially in boxing, get a lot of criticism from fans and media. when they make wrong calls or they do something wrong or whatever, or they do something controversial, they get a lot of flack. But when they do good decisions like this, I think they deserve a lot of credit. We also need to talk about those moments just as much as we talk about the controversial criticisms that we give them. So, I mean, like you said, props and credit to that referee for jumping in and stopping it. Because being knocked out on your feet, I mean, that's kind of scary. It's just like, wow, your body's reacting like that. I mean, what's going on there? But so you don't think we'll see a rematch?
No, maybe. I mean, it's like the Anthony Joshua thing against Ruiz and Anthony Joshua against Usyk. I suppose it's slightly different in women's boxing because you could get a title shot quite easily. But if I was the coach, would you want to? Did she win a second of that fight? No. She was knocked out, stood up. You don't get seen many stoppages in women's boxing as well. So go away, rebuild, come back. They can always blame it on the hand injury. Tell her mentally, like, hey, you know what? That was too quick. We should have taken a softer touch. It was due to your hand injury, blah, 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 stuff like that. But in my opinion, if I was her coach, no, I wouldn't put her in there. She can't back her up. She hasn't got any power.
That's what I think. Like you just said, like, go back and rebuild. Maybe fight an interim fight in between. Fight somebody who isn't like Bumgarner, but maybe a little bit closer or in a way. Or start sparring with people who are at least semi-similar to her. I don't think it's the next fight where they rematch. I think at least one fight, maybe two in between.
She should change her style completely because maybe she didn't realize how strong Bumgarner was and how powerful. But she needs to box her from the outside, not let Bumgarner get her feet set and use that power. Not be able to generate that power, keep her moving, keep her twisting, keep her turning.
Right. No, yeah, I get it. Yeah. Two upsets on the card on the zone in Sheffield, but upsets are always exciting in the boxing world. It gets people's attention because you have that expectation going into these fights, like, oh yeah, well, he should win. The plan is for him to win, so-and-so is an opponent, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it is what it is.
See, the one thing I wanted to raise is with everybody listening, maybe even put this on Twitter, is we complain when they stick them in there with somebody that's an easy touch. And then we laugh when they stick them in with somebody and they get beat.
That's
so
true.
It's like, which one do you want? Is that good matchmaking or is that bad matchmaking? Is it good matchmaking because it was a tough fight and even though the home fighter lost, they've put them in there with somebody live? But at the same time, is it bad matchmaking when Matchroom lose 2 world championships? They have rematches, but essentially they've lost 2 world championships.
I understand what you're saying, but I think it's more like your fans and media are playing the odds. I mean, how often does this happen? Most of the time, if you had to put a percentage on it, most of the time, the outcome that you're expecting when it's a situation like this, a matchup like this, it happens. It happens. So that's why I think people, media, fans, stuff like that, are so accustomed to criticizing, offering those criticisms, talking smack about like, oh, why are we seeing this fight? This is a horrible matchup. It's not a balanced matchup. That so and so is overmatched. Like this isn't. They need to fight a live body or this and that. And then, like you mentioned, but then they actually go, and then something like this happens in these 2 fights, Chico Martinez and Bumgarner. And then people start laughing. Oh, I can't believe you lost to that person. It's just like,
what a Matchroom doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's just with social media, everybody has an opinion. They have access to an immediate opinion to put it out there, and they, other people start engaging. I mean, it is what it is. That's what happens, especially in sports, especially in the sport of boxing as well. That's always going to happen. That's never going to change. But I think you raise a good point. It's just like, well, that you look at it from that angle, you look at it from this angle. Either way, people are always going to talk smack. Like, okay, if the fighter loses to the B-side fighter that should have been beaten, you're going to talk smack like, oh, you suck, or I can't believe they lost. Maybe they're overrated. And then if they win, especially if they clean them out or they blow them out in a decision or a knockout, people are just like, oh, this was a waste of time. You know, they shouldn't have put this on TV, or they shouldn't have put this broadcasted this. You know, they need to fight a live body. Either way, they're just a group of people out there who are just never satisfied. They get a high off of offering those criticisms. But that's what happens. That's what happens, you know. That's the nature of the game. In sports, in every sport around the world, especially ones that get mainstream coverage or have their own hardcore coverage or what have you, that's what's going to happen. We're never going to stop that. You know, sometimes we do that. You know, we're guilty of it too, to an extent. I'm sure if you go back through all of our episodes, we've almost done, we might be at 200 if you include the bonus shows. I'm sure we've had conversations or analysis of situations like that. So it is what it is, but it makes everything exciting. It keeps the, you know, it's just kind of like, oh, well, it just takes one shot to end you, even if you're losing the fight. You know, that's what happens. Look at Chavez Taylor, right? When I think Chavez was losing the fight, and then he got the stoppage in the 12th round in the final seconds. You know, how controversial was that? People were saying the referee gave it to him and all that, even though Chavez was losing the fight. But look at what a big story that was, and what a big situation that was, you know, like, and it was such a moment. It's like, wow. I mean, regardless of if you agree with the decision or not, it was such a moment in time in the sport of boxing. And that's what happens. So we'll see, but that's always going to happen. You know, that's kind of like beating a dead horse. So moving on from the Footprint Center. What is that? Is this the arena that we went to in downtown Phoenix, or is this different? We went for the Chavez Jacobs fight.
It wasn't. If it wasn't called that when we went.
Yeah, it wasn't called this unless they changed it, but I don't know. From the Footprint Center in Phoenix, Arizona on Showtime. David Benavidez remains undefeated at 25-0 as he gets the 7th round TKO over Kyrone Davis. Davis put up a pretty decent fight, a better fight than I thought, a better fight than I think a lot of people thought. But at the end of the day, Benavidez was just too strong for him. And Benavidez ended up getting the victory here. What do you think about Benavidez's performance?
Yeah, very similar to you. I thought the first couple of rounds, Davis was doing pretty well and managed to keep circling away from, you know, Benavidez's power hand. But just like the Terminator, you know, Benavidez just keeps walking you down, and eventually kind of pummels you into submission. And, luckily, Davis's corner threw in the towel and, let him live to fight another day. But for a standing opponent, I thought, on like a week's notice, 10 days notice, I thought Kyrone Davis did very well.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially being, like you mentioned, a substitution opponent. Because, when we see that a lot in the sport of boxing where a last minute replacement comes in, sometimes it's crazy because, the fighter who's already like somebody like Benavidez wasn't training for that opponent for all those weeks. So sometimes it's a little different. Like, oh, wow, this is actually kind of competitive. It's kind of made it a more interesting fight. And sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it's just even more of a blowout because they just needed a body to keep the event going. So Benavidez always gets the win. He calls out Canelo and Charlo in his post fight. Obviously, we're going to touch on the WBC convention in regards to what Canelo's head trainer Eddie Reynoso requested. David Benavidez, his promoter, was also there. Samson from Zamfir, Samson Lukowitz. We'll touch on that when we touch on the WBC situation with Canelo and all that, because I don't know if you saw the video, but I saw it just before we came on air today. It was kind of funny to see Samson right by Eddie Reynoso when Eddie Reynoso was at the microphone, especially when Eddie Reynoso requested what he requested. You can see Samson's like reaction and his body language just completely changed. It was just, I thought it was hilarious. I don't know if people noticed it, but if you did, I'm glad you noticed it because I thought it was kind of funny. But Benavidez, Charlo's not going to fight him. Charlo's Charles not going to fight him because he's not going to move up to 168 to fight somebody like Benavidez. It won't be Benavidez. And Benavidez, this was at a catch weight, wasn't it? 169. And Benavidez made 169 on the dot. I mean, does that give you any concern that he has trouble making 168, especially because he's missed weight in the past already?
I think at times it's just his lifestyle, I think, before, obviously, he used to like to go out, have a bit of a party lifestyle. He is huge for the weight. He's tall. He could easily be a cruiserweight.
Right.
With how big he is, obviously he's getting older. He's like 25 now, so maybe he's just like thickening out. His muscles growing into this. How big he is. But him against Canelo would be a great fight. It's probably looking like it maybe September next year. So
maybe. I mean,
there isn't many bodies left. That's the issue. That's
the issue there. Like, I mean, like it's funny how a lot of people are like calling for Benavidez. It says like, oh, Canelo needs to fight Benavidez or something. There was one tweet that I saw that said like, oh, Canelo needs to fight Benavidez, pretty much saying like if he doesn't, it affects, I don't know if it's his legacy or something, or he's not legitimately it's something along the lines of Canelo's not legitimately undisputed champion at 168 pounds until he beats Benavidez, because Benavidez has never lost his title. He lost it on his own on the scale or when he did cocaine.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very interesting take. I think that was just to stir the pot and get some reactions out of the online boxing community. But I obviously you want to see somebody like Canelo fight the best, fight Benavidez and stuff like that. It's not that we don't want to see it, but the guy literally fought, 4 times in 5 months? Was it 4 or 5 times or something like that? Not 5 months, 11 months. I'm sorry.
Yeah. 4 times in 11 months, yeah.
4 times in 11 months to become undisputed champion at 168 pounds. And it's not,
Callum Smith, Caleb Plant, Avni Yildirim, and Billy Joe Saunders.
Right. So, I mean, 3 out of those 4, I mean, regardless of what you think about them, they all had titles. Is it somebody like Canelo's fault that he fought those caliber of opponents, even if people knew that he would be the favorite or should win? They all had the titles, and he had a goal to become undisputed, and he did it within a year. When there's people at their respective promotions who only fight once a year, and when you fight twice a year, even that's applauded, and Canelo was fighting twice a year for a long time, May, September. So I understand that. But he had a goal, and he was like, nope. He's like, as soon as he became a promotional free agent, he was like, all right, I'm gonna get this goal. He did it within a year. He became undisputed champion within a year. That's impressive. So obviously, a fight with Benavidez at 168 pounds would be interesting. But am I wrong to say, or is this a misguided prediction that I think a fight between Canelo and David Benavidez would be something like when Canelo fought Mayweather? Canelo is Mayweather in this regard, and Benavidez is Canelo at that time.
I think it'd be very similar to the Callum Smith performance. I think Canelo kind of dominates him because he's got a bigger body, a bigger target. I think Benavidez would probably put up more of a fight than Callum Smith did. Callum Smith went a few rounds, but there wasn't really much coming back. I don't know whether obviously that was due to the fact of, Canelo obviously fucked up his biceps, so he was really fighting one-handed against probably the best fighter in the world. I think Canelo wins, but I think everyone just wants to see it because we know how game Benavidez is.
Right. And Benavidez's name, especially after his last fight this past weekend, there's a lot of people who, especially because Canelo's fight was on Showtime, because obviously they're going to push PBC-oriented fighters, which I understand that. There was a lot of casual fans, because obviously the casual fans tune in for the heavyweight fights, Tyson Fury, Wilder, and Canelo, fights like that. So I'm sure it happens to you. We talked about this before, but the casual boxing fan always either talk to us or they text us or they call us or they see us at work or wherever we're at. Hey, what do you think about Canelo fight? Is he going to fight this kid Benavidez, or what's going on here? He should fight that kid Benavidez. Like, I got that quite a few times within the last week or so, especially after Canelo's victory. And I said, oh, I don't think it's going to happen next. I was like, but it could happen by the end of next year. But that just shows you the power of marketing. Showtime was pushing it. Obviously, they would prefer that because it brings Canelo back to Showtime or back to PBC in a sense. I think ultimately they want some type of PBC fighter so Canelo can come back to the platform. But yeah, I think I agree. It could be maybe September. But based on Canelo's anticipated matchup in May, which we'll touch on, these guys at 168 and all that stuff can't just sit around and wait for him, like, why not fight each other? They should all fight each other and see, okay, who comes out on top. Whoever comes out on top gets the payday, fights the best fighter in the world. Why not? Obviously Showtime and PBC scheduled David Benavidez to fight within the same week or within 1 week of Canelo's fight because they want to keep him on the schedule because they're hoping that he's in the running. So like, okay, we'll have them fight within a week of each other. So there's a higher chance that somebody like Benavidez can be Canelo's next opponent in May or June. Obviously that was planned, but it makes sense from a business perspective, from a television perspective, from a promotional perspective. That's what happens. But yeah, I agree. Like if Benavidez gets a shot, I think he gets it sometimes towards the end of next year against Canelo, but put all these guys against each other, have Charlo move up. He called out Charlo too. I don't think it's going to happen, but I would love to see a Benavidez Charlo fight. I would love to see that. I think I would rather see that than Benavidez Canelo. What do you think?
Great fight. I'd still like the Benavidez Caleb Plant. Obviously, you've got that little.
That's a good fight too.
Yeah, you got that little bit of spite from that time. They kind of went at it a little bit at the Mayweather gym. But like you said, yeah, I think the governing bodies or whatever need to get together and say like, hey, you guys are all going to fight, and the winner is mandatory for the WBC, the WBA, whatever it is. Canelo holds all of them, so it doesn't really matter. And the winner gets the next shot at Canelo, and it's the biggest payday. So why not risk it? Put your O on the line, and whoever comes out on top gets a shot at undisputed and their biggest payday by far.
Right. Yeah, put Benavidez and Plant together. Why not? Put them against each other. I don't know. Bivol says he can make 168, even though he's never going to get a shot because he's on the other side of the street. But why not? Obviously in an ideal world, put all these guys against each other, or put the top 2 and 3 guys against each other, or 1 and 2 against each other. Who comes out on top gets the shot at Canelo. Why not?
It would make all of the mandatories fight each other.
Yeah, why not? It would make a fight with Canelo that much more interesting and that much more marketable, that much more competitive. But obviously we think we have a fantasy world here on the podcast and in the boxing media to an extent. We'd like to see that ideally, but most of the time it doesn't happen like that. But that's most bang for your buck. I'm telling you, that's what needs to happen. Moving on that Showtime card, David Benavidez' brother, Jose Benavidez Jr., returns to the ring after a very, very long layoff as he gets the majority draw over Francisco Emmanuel Torres. It's crazy that Benavidez Jr. At one time, especially coming out of the amateurs, was looked at as one of the fighters to keep an eye out. And then he fought Crawford, and Crawford stopped him. and big long layoff, and he gets a majority draw here. I mean, what do you think? You think that gas tank is done?
I mean, he looked bad. He looked really, really bad. I don't know whether it's the layoff, whether he just, thought like, I'm fighting in my, my home state. I'm gonna get the victory regardless. But I mean, hopefully it's a wake up call. I was a big fan. I like both Benavidez. I think they're both good fighters. They're both great for TV, great for casual fans. Just both of their styles are very, they fight more than box. So they're great to watch. So I'm hoping that this is the wake up call that that Jose Benavidez needed to kind of say like, hey, dude, if you don't knuckle down, if you don't get back in the gym and kind of get your head right, that you're gonna start losing fights, and it's gonna be your career's gonna be gone. So let's see what happens. But he didn't even look interested really when he was in the ring either.
No, right. I agree. I mean, you talked about Terry Harper not seemingly into the sport as much as we think she is, and maybe like, hey, maybe she stops boxing. Maybe she just strikes me as that type of person. That's what you were kind of describing. Is Jose Benavidez Jr. kind of the same way at this point?
It seems so from the outside looking in. And that performance, he wasn't great. I thought he did quite well against Crawford, even though Crawford ended up stopping him.
Yeah, that was actually, there was actually moments where it was actually a pretty good fight. He actually got some shots in until he got stopped, like you said.
Yeah, it seems that David kind of like loves the sport a lot more, even though he's had his ups and downs as well. Maybe the both of them just kind of need like give him a little bit of a shake and be like, hey, you know what, dude, like it's a short career, You have times where you're going to be out the ring for like 18 months, 2 years, and you probably only get maximum of 10 years as a boxer. And you really need to, strike whilst the iron's hot, earn that money, get those big fights, and then boom, it's over. That's it. Your career's done and dusted. So, they both need to kind of, maximize their potential now. And, they both interview well, very good with the media, do a lot of interviews and stuff like that. So, make the most of it before you get too old. And so hopefully, fingers crossed they do, because they're both good to watch.
Absolutely. Speaking of good to watch, this past Saturday also from the Honda Center in Anaheim, California, formerly the Arrowhead Pond. It's always going to be the Arrowhead Pond to me, but it's now the Honda Center. On DAZN, Jaime Munguia remains undefeated at 38-0 with the 12-round unanimous decision win over Gabriel Rosado. Munguia got the three scores of 118, 108, 119, 109, and 117, 111. We talked about when this fight was over, how if you didn't watch this fight and you see those scores, all three of them so wide, you think, it was kind of a blowout. It was kind of, it was kind of a one-sided fight. Munguia did win, but if you actually watch the fight, it was very entertaining, even though Rosado did lose on all the cards, as those scores pretty much said. It was very entertaining. There was a very scrappy fight. They each went in there and got some good blows in. I was entertained. I think you were entertained. I think we both enjoyed the fight. What'd you think about it?
Great fight. It's good to be back, ringside after all this time due to COVID. We go back, and this is like the first fight that we both got to watch together. Yeah, great main event. I thought Munguia, started really, really well, came out, and I thought, honestly had a very good game plan for somebody like Gabe Rosado, who loves to try to slow the pace and box at his own tempo. Munguia decided to come out fast, and really just, come out fast, lots of pace, combination punching, which proved to be the perfect game plan, in my opinion. I thought Gabe Rosado did well. I thought the scorecards were a little bit too much in Munguia's favor, but, I didn't score it round by round. Every round, I thought Gabe did pretty well. He ate a lot of punches, but, in typical Gabe Rosado style, he was always still in the fight. I'm sure he'll be around again. We'll see him again. because he's just that sort of guy. He's the Nate Diaz of the boxing world, as I kept saying all week. He's always in good fights, and when you see his name on a card, you're like, that's a fight to watch. Definitely stay there in your seat and watch that fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like the comparison with the whole UFC's Nate Diaz. I think that's a good comparison for somebody like Gabriel Rosado, King Gabriel Rosado. So there's two kings in the sport of boxing, King Rai and King Gabe. So let's see if there's any beef there for the use of that name. But yeah, I think Rosado just he tried to box him to an extent and tried to find that one opening. I don't know if you remember, I forgot which round it is, one of the middle rounds, I believe, or something, but Rosado was in the corner, and that same punch that he knocked out Beck the Bully with, he almost caught Munguia with. And if you go back and you watch it, you can see that he goes for it, but he misses by just an inch or so as Munguia moves out of the way, or Rosado just didn't time it right. And you can see Rosado's face, like he knew, like, oh, if I would have connected on that, you would have went down. So I think definitely at that point is when I knew that Rosado was just looking for that one shot. He was trying to jab and stuff like that. Munguia was going to the body a lot too, which was very impressive. He was doing a lot of body work. I was very impressed with his body work, especially since he's been with Eric Morales. He worked on the body a lot, so I appreciated that. Everybody always appreciates good body work because it sets up a lot of other punches in the head area, of course. But it was an entertaining fight. A lot of people had an issue with or some people had an issue with the announcer, how he labeled it as a potential fight of the year. Some people were upset about that. I mean, who cares? I think on the broadcast, I think on the broadcast, I think it was Mannix or somebody had supposedly, I read on Twitter that Mannix had called him out, or Todd Grisham had called him out saying, this isn't a fight of the year, or, I can't believe something like that. And then some people kind of supported that. Oh, I'm glad he called out the absurdity of this. It's just like, who cares? Like, if you disagree with it, then disagree with it. It was an entertaining fight, and based on the fan reaction and stuff like that, people were just like, they were excited. It was the emotion behind it. Is it going to be fight of the year? Probably not, but it was exciting. If somebody wants to label it like that, let them label it. It's not, if certain reputable organizations like the Ring or, Boxing Social or us or anything like that, or ESPN or whatever, these big outlets make a decision like that in their official determinations, well then that's something different. But who cares? That's a little small detail that's not worth to get mad over or get upset over. It's like, who cares? Just leave it.
When Grisham and Mora and Mannix compare some fighters to oh my God, he's got a style of Meldick Taylor and stuff like that, as if they don't say absurd stuff like that sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It keeps things interesting. Obviously, it made it interesting enough for us to talk about it right now. So It is what it is. It's not really that big a deal. Either way, we were in the arena. We saw how lively the crowd was. The crowd was into it the whole night, especially in the main event. They were into it. Munguia, I think me and you were even very, very surprised that Munguia had a big backing there. He was a kind of, they have something to build off of there, and he's a young guy. He's obviously improving. I think he is improving with Eric Morales. I still think he has some stuff to work on. If he fights somebody with, they called out, I don't know if they necessarily called him out, but the Triple G was mentioned maybe after his fight with Murata and stuff like that. I think you had mentioned, we had talked about it just after the fight or just before, that Munguia should just go after Andrade. I don't know if you mentioned that. I believe you mentioned that he should go after Andrade. And since Andrade has a belt, Andrade has a world title at 160 pounds. Why not let Munguia go after him? They both fight on DAZN. Andrade needs a name. and Munguia wants a title shot. Why not? Tell me how that doesn't make sense. Tell me.
No, I mean, it does. And obviously, Munguia was previously the WBO champion, right? At the weight below
154, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, that gives them scope. He maybe too late now, but obviously, you know, the WBO has that kind of rule where if you were the champion at, you know, the weight below, you move up. Normally, you're eligible for a title shot. They both fight on DAZN. You know, one's with Matchroom, one's with Golden Boy, both on DAZN. So it should be, you know, relatively easy to make. Pretty much on the same schedule. You know, obviously, Andrade fights this weekend against Jason Quigley, which we'll touch on soon. So it makes sense. It really does make sense.
I guarantee you that obviously Andre's a favorite this weekend. We'll touch on that fight later. But if Quigley, for some reason or another, gets the upset win and becomes a world champion at 160 pounds over Andrade, you don't think Golden Boy sometime next year is going to put Munguia and Quigley for the WBO middleweight world title?
100%. Yeah.
They're both Golden Boy. They're both
with that crowd. You know, the following that we saw that Munguia had, without a doubt. Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously Andrew's a favorite. We'll touch on that in a second or so. But it was an entertaining event. It was a good event. The fans were definitely out to have a good time and enjoyed the event. Obviously, this was our first physical event going back in physically at the arena as media. We were there seeing some old colleagues that we haven't seen personally in a while. So that was nice to see. Shout out to Andy Purewall of Boxing Social, who was also there and you know, hung out with us and got some different content and stuff. You know, he hustles. He's very good at his job. So shout out to him and the whole Boxing Socials team. You guys do very, very good work. Moving on, Alexis Rocha, Lex, gets the 18th win of his career as he gets the 9th round KO over Giovannis Barraza, who takes the second loss of his career. This was the co-feature bout of the evening. Rocha pretty much dominated. He essentially dominated Barraza up until he got the stoppage in the 9th. What do you think about Rocha's performance?
Yeah, really good. I thought, you know, he methodically broke him down. You know, at times you could see that he was kind of wary of, you know, Barraza's knockout power. You know, he had, 23 wins, 15 of those coming by stoppage. Obviously, you know, he can bang. So you could see at times that Rocha didn't really want to get too close, throw too many punches in case, you know, obviously he countered and got caught. Good victory, though, for Rocha. Like we've kind of said before, just unfortunately, he's in a very, very strong division with all of those world titles that kind of, you know, sewn up, and a lot of them are actually on the wrong side of the street, as they say, the wrong side of the street. So it's really, I really feel for him. I just don't know where he's really going to go next from here, because he's had a few fights recently. Obviously took the loss against Ellis, but you know, the next step up is really to you know, I would say at least, you know, like a contender status. You know, maybe start picking off some of those names that are you know, kind of getting over the hill and coming back down the other side.
I think it's interesting you mentioned Ellis. Obviously, he defeated Rocha, gave Rocha his first loss, Rashidi Ellis, and he hasn't really been seen with Golden Boy. I know they have like some issues going on between them and stuff like that, and it doesn't seem. I don't. Is he technically released, or is he a free agent from them, or
yeah,
what happened?
He got released, I think, this week.
Right? Yeah, it was recent, right? So I think that's very interesting. I wonder what happened behind the scenes or what happened there, especially since he won. You know. I wonder what happened to that relationship, why he was released. Like he was the winner, you know. Obviously you can still build both fighters, you know, but yeah, I don't know what happened there. That's definitely an interesting situation. And Ellis, I'm sure he's probably going to go with PBC. He knows that all the welterweights are at. I mean, I think that would be the ideal landing spot for him. And I don't think people should be surprised if he pops up there on one of their cards sometime next year. But in going back to Rocha, I was able to speak to him following the event when all the fans and everything had departed the building. The media was there. We were able to get some interviews and talk to different people at media scrums and stuff like that. But Lex Alexis Rocha, when he was done doing like the media scrum, I was able to get him on the side individually. And I asked him how his weight cut was. And then I asked him how much longer he can make 147, because I had that same concern. And we have that same concern how, okay, well, all the players in that weight class, they're not on your side of the street, quote unquote. So I asked him, how much longer do you think he can make 147? And, this is what he said. I want you to listen to it. I want our listeners to listen to it. And then on the other side of it, we'll dissect it. And then you give me your reaction. So, congratulations on your win.
Thank you.
Obviously, how did your body feel in there? Like, how was the weight cut and everything in there?
Oh man, the weight cut was perfect. I feel like my body's maturing more now that I'm getting more older, and I've always made the weight good, but I think me getting older has to do a lot with this. So, the weight cut was really good. I can see the muscle definition on my body now, so that's good.
Well, that's what I'm asking, because like the older you get, the harder it is to make a certain weight.
Yeah.
So how much longer do you think that your body can last at 147?
Honestly, my honest opinion, I think I'm gonna be here my whole career, because I don't see myself getting bigger, as in taller, maybe more muscular, but I don't see myself going up to 154. Mm-hmm. I see myself eventually possibly going down in weight.
To like 140?
To 140 maybe.
Your body can do that?
I think my body can do it, yeah. The way I sweat when I'm at weight, it's crazy. But, I do struggle like everyone else. Making weight's not easy. I think if I take more discipline and more proper nutrition, I could probably make 140.
What's the lowest your body's ever been at, like recently, maybe within the last 2 or 3 years?
Oh, man, I don't know. Probably 145.8. So
you really think you can make 140?
I mean, I could probably try. Maybe if I do like a catchweight fight at 144, I could maybe possibly do that. But I don't know. I guess we'll see. My body's not going to get any bigger as much. Maybe it might shrink a little bit. Perfect example, look at my brother Ronnie, who was at 126, 130. He went all the way down to 122, and he was making it perfect.
How is he doing, by the way?
I don't know if the news is out there, but he's doing good right now. So,
okay, that's good.
Yeah, he's doing good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm almost done with him. I'm almost done with him.
Yeah, no. Keep on.
Done. So obviously, we're here in Anaheim, California. You're from Santa Ana, right down the street.
Yeah.
The question I had is, do they still make you stay in the Fighter Hotel even though you live down the street?
Yeah, they do. I mean, I choose to.
Really?
I choose to because, there's a lot of distractions. People at home, they will come to your house or, what if. But when I go to the hotel, it's just strictly tunnel vision. Me and my team, that's what I want to be with.
But do they give you the option? Like, does Golden Boy say, hey, you live down the street, you can stay at home if you want?
I mean, they're very courteous enough to give me a room out there, so why not? I don't want to take full advantage like that, being at home, my home.
Right. Yeah. So what's the plan for 2022 then?
I mean, 2022 is bigger names out there. There's a lot of names out there. I don't even know where to start, but I feel like I'm progressing in the rankings, and I want those matches.
How many fights are you looking for in 2022?
At least 4. At least
4?
At least, yeah. I want to start early February, hopefully again June, again September, and then December.
Are those like the estimated dates that you're kind of looking at? Like, it's just guessing, right?
I'm just guessing, especially with COVID right now and all the fighters being laid out a little bit. Who knows how it's going to go, but we'll see.
All right, man. Congratulations again, man.
I appreciate it, brother.
All right, bro.
Thank you.
So what'd you think?
The moving down is interesting. We just kind of touched on a strong division. If it goes down to, 140, those titles are obviously going to become, vacant. Once Josh Taylor has probably fought Jack Catterall, he'll then, I would imagine, move up and fight Terence Crawford. That he's kind of openly spoken about. That would probably be the option. But, could he go up to 154? Maybe not now, but maybe in a couple of years, once his man strength, as they say, comes in and he kind of fills out, it may be easier to go up to 154. But, I'm sure he knows better than us. I'm sure his team will sit there and look at that as an option. Yeah, very, very interesting though, especially if he does manage to get out 4 times next year. I think that would be good for him.
Yeah, I hope he does. But I was very surprised, as you are obviously, about the whole 140. I was already surprised that he said, I think I can stay at 147 for my whole career. And I was like, okay, well, he knows his body, he knows how it progresses and stuff like that. So that might be true. But when he said, I think I can even go down to 140, I was like, 7 pounds? That's why I asked him. He's like, you can make 140? And then obviously he said, oh, well, maybe you have to be like a catch weight or something. So I think he kind of thought about it a little bit. But, You never know. You never know. I mean, if it's the right fight, I mean, I think if like for one reason or another he gets a title shot at 140, let's just say he's in the right place at the right time. Like, hey, do you want a shot? You can get a shot for the world title at 140, but you have to make 140. I think he would actually give it a shot. I think he would give it a shot. Don't you think?
I think he would. If he could make that, I know that he's highly ranked in the WBC, and they just called Jose Zepeda as the mandatory for the
Josh Taylor
for the WBC. So interesting, and obviously there's the old sparring with Virgil Ortiz at 147. Remember when that happened? Was it like a year, 2 years ago?
Well, Lex has also sparred with Pacquiao. He sparred with Pacquiao, I think, for this Pacquiao's prior camp. He was at Wildcard as one of his sparring partners. And
Josh Taylor for the Regis Prograis.
Yeah, so he's him and his brother, especially Lex, has gotten some really good work in sparring with some of these elite guys.
Canelo?
He's actually been with Canelo too. I mean, like, how many people could say that? How many people could say, I mean, it obviously helps that he's located in Southern California, and Southern California has a huge boxing scene. So he's able to go to Wild Card in Hollywood. He's able to go to San Diego with Canelo, Riverside, California with Robert Garcia, Virgil Ortiz, and stuff like that. And it only helps his growth as a fighter. Obviously he has that one loss he suffered against Rashidi Ellis, but Rashidi Ellis, obviously, like you mentioned, just got released from Golden Boy. There was some issues between them. So I don't think we'll see that rematch anytime soon. Especially if Rashidi Ellis goes with PBC or I mean, if he goes with Top Rank, it's a little bit easier maybe to make that fight between Golden Boy and Top Rank again. But if he goes with PBC, it's definitely going to be a lot more difficult. But he's Lex is pretty much the only, I think, welterweight, or if not, I don't want to say only because I'm not entirely sure, but I guess it's primarily the main welterweight. Well, in addition to Virgil, that Golden Boy has, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Am I missing anybody?
Off the top of my head, yeah, I would have said obviously you got Virgil, Lex, and then you said like Rashidi Ellis, but he's obviously leaving. Yeah, I would believe so.
Yeah. So, but he's still young. Like he mentioned, he's still young. He's still got a lot of years left in the game. Hopefully there's not like a life-altering injury or anything like that. I still got a lot of confidence in him. I think him and his brother work really, really hard. Obviously, his brother, Ronnie Rios, was supposed to fight this weekend on the Andrade Quigley fight, which we'll touch on in a minute or so. But he actually came down with COVID. But as you heard from Alexis Rocha there, that he's doing a lot better. And then Ronnie Rios was actually tweeting following the events this past weekend, which is a good sign. So hopefully he's doing okay. Shout out to him and his team and the whole family over there. Hopefully they're all doing okay. But yeah, let's see where Lex goes from here. Hopefully he fights 4 times next year. That'll really kind of speed him up, put him back on track. In the running to get a really big fight. And because I mean, he's good. It's good that he's young. He's 18-1. He still has a lot of time ahead of him to really progress. Especially if he's still becoming like sparring partners for a lot of these elite guys in Southern California who train out here. It only helps him. So we'll see how it goes from here. Moving on, this upcoming weekend, fight previews this Friday, the 19th of November, from the SNHU Arena in Manchester, New Hampshire, on the Zone. Akhmadiliev, I didn't pronounce his first name because I don't want to mess it up. 9-0, defends his WBA and IBF super bantamweight titles against Jose Velasquez, 29-6-2. What do you think about this matchup?
Like you touched on, obviously it should have been, Ronnie Rios should have been in there as the mandatory for the
I was really looking forward to that fight too.
Yeah, it would have been a good one. Obviously, Ronnie kind of going through a purple patch, in his career. So it would have been good to see him in there. Good to see, Akhmadiliev out. This should be really just a run out bout for him, just to give him a fight whilst Ronnie, recovers, and then obviously they'll rearrange that fight. Huge step up for Velasquez, who's a 32-year-old Chilean fighter. Actually fought earlier this year in May against Ariel Lopez, but the huge step up. He's never fought on a stage like this before, so I would, I would imagine MJ comes out on top. Great fighter, great to see him back.
Yeah, he's a great fighter. He's got that amateur pedigree. That's why he's 9-0. But he's got these world titles already. He's got that amateur pedigree, like a Lomachenko and those kinds of guys. But just like we talked about earlier, all these upsets, Kiko Martinez, Bumgarner, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Velasquez gets the upset victory. I mean, with the pattern that we're seeing, you never know. I mean, obviously, Akhmadaliev is MJ's the big high favorite, but well, we've been wrong before, in picking the obvious favorite, and look at what happens. And we have to eat our words. That could happen. Also on the card, Julio Cesar Martinez, 18-1, goes up against McWilliams Arroyo for the WBC Flyweight World Championship. I'm looking forward to this fight too. McWilliams Arroyo has been in there with guys like Chocolatito and stuff like that. Estrada. I think this might be one of the fights of the nights, especially in terms of punches thrown, because always these lower weight classes always throw so many punches because they're smaller. This might be my favorite fight of the night, assuming it pans out how I think it's going to pan out. What do you think? By far
on paper, the best fight of on the card, unless Jose Velasquez turns into be like an amazing beast when he steps into the ring. This should really be fight of the night. Julio Cesar Martinez, just an absolute monster, in that weight category, very heavy-handed. McWilliams Arroyo, like you said, probably got the more of the experience. This fight was supposed to happen in February, and then if you remember, Martinez actually sat and did the press conference, and then decided to say that he had a broken hand, which was very kind of strange thing to do. Yeah, that was weird. Luckily, they actually managed to run around and find an opponent for McWilliams Arroyo, and he won by, I think it was won by TKO. So this is kind of a rearranged fight from earlier in the year. But if you're going to watch this card, make sure to catch this fight. Yeah, that definitely, on paper at least, seems to be the best matchup of the night. Also on the card, Demetrius Andrade, WBO middleweight world champion, goes up against Golden Boy Promotions' Jason Quigley. This is for the WBO middleweight world title, isn't it? Yeah. So Andre is obviously defending it, 30-0. He's undefeated. Quigley's only has one loss at 19-1. I think in this one, Andre is the. Would you categorize him as the heavy favorite or just a favorite? No, I would definitely say heavy favorite. This is a huge step up for Quigley. He lost to Terriano Johnson in 2019, and then obviously only got a majority decision victory over Shane Mosley Jr. In May of this year, which actually gave him the chance for the WBO title. Andrade himself really has fought, not the greatest opposition since becoming, world champion. What's he fought? Liam Williams, Luke Keeler, Selecki, Arthur Akov, Walter Kakundakwa. He's managed to be the WBO world title champion for that long, fighting that sort of pedigree is beyond me. I don't think it's his fault. I just think he says though. So he says. I kind of believe him. I think just nobody wants to fight him because he doesn't really bring anything to the table. Like in terms of look at when he called out Canelo. Canelo was like, "You're a horrible fighter." He's just like, "You just want a payday." I don't know. I mean, that's why I said somebody like Munguia. Why not make Munguia versus Andrade? Eddie Hearn I think would go for it, and Golden Boy. I think that's a really good shot for Munguia to actually beat him and get a world title at middleweight. I mean, I don't know why they don't talk about. I mean, hopefully they talk about that fight next year. But they're talking about Munguia going after Triple G and all this. So I don't know. I mean, Andre is just stuck in limbo. He's like, I don't think he's in a worse position than Dimitri Bivol is, but he's in a similar spot where they have world titles and, just nobody wants to fight them. But nobody wants to fight Bivol at that weight class or between 168 and 175 because Bivol is dangerous. And I think with Andrade,
I don't know if it's just like a marketing standpoint or business standpoint that people like other opponents just don't want to fight him. I think it's just kind of like, what do you bring to the table? I think that's how they look at it, right?
No, I mean, that's what everyone's been saying for the longest time, is he's awkward, good, but also, doesn't bring much money to the table because of his lack of support. He's not outstanding to watch. So he's not going to get, all the casual fans, he's not a pay-per-view fighter. So it's kind of like, why would you want to fight him? But, on the other hand, for him, he needs to start taking some of these, these hard challenges because, he can't just complain about, not being able to unify and stuff like that. Because it's the same sort of thing. They don't want to fight him, and then he doesn't want to fight people below him. So it's just kind of like a vicious circle, I guess. And he ends up just taking all these soft-touch British people, it seems.
Right. Yeah. I mean, honestly, if I was like Charlo or anybody at middleweight, Munguia or something, like I would want to fight him. He has a world title. Why not? But it is what it is. It is what it is. But we'll see. Let's see how Quigley does. Quigley could be motivated. You never know. You never know. Like I give Quigley a decent shot here. I think Andrade takes it. I think he is a heavy favorite, but who knows? Crazy thing happens. We've been talking about upsets the whole show. You never know. You never know. Rounding off the card, Callie Reese, 18-7-1, goes up against Jessica Camara. This is for the WBO, WBA, and IBO super lightweight titles. What do you think about this matchup?
Should be a good matchup. Kayla Reese is a good fighter. Obviously, me and you were ringside when she fought Cecilia Breakus, where the whole crowd booed because they thought Kayla Reese won. Since then, she's gone on a run of victories. This is that kind of mini tournament that Eddie Hearn and DiBella decided to do together. Chantal Cameron won her half of it. So the winner of this fight will go on to fight for undisputed against Chantal Cameron. I think Kayla Reese may take it if she's still got anything left in the tank. She's actually had quite a lot of fights for a female fighter, 26. If she's anything like the fighter that we saw against Cecilia Breakus, then I would put my money on her.
I agree. This upcoming Saturday, the 20th of November, from the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino in Las Vegas on ESPN Plus, pay-per-view, keyword, in a possible fight of the year candidate, definitely. Hopefully. Terrence Crawford, 37-0, defends his WBO, welterweight world title against Showtime Sean Porter, 31-3-1. Crawford finally gets a name on his resume. Let's see if he's able to get the victory. But he finally got his wish after all these years and all these opponents, all the criticisms. Sean Porter steps up. Sean Porter, you got to give it to Sean Porter too. Sean Porter, for at least a couple years, 2 years or whatever it was vocal about wanting this fight. And then the WBO actually ordered it. And I mean, I don't know if Top Rank and WBO thought that Porter and PBC weren't going to take it, but they made a deal. And Sean Porter stepped up to the plate. I honestly think, I've been seeing a lot of people picking Terrence Crawford. I think this is an even matchup. I think Porter, his pedigree, especially because he's fought all the best welterweights. He's fought Thurman. He's fought Garcia. He's fought Spence. He's fought Ugas. He's fought all the guys that are like world champions right now, or have been world champions, or have been in that rotation for years. I mean, and Crawford, he's fought what? Jose Benavidez Jr., Postal. Obviously, Crawford has the eye test. He passes the eye test heavily, and he has that mean streak. So I can see why a lot of people have so much confidence in him. But my thing is resume, man. Like, I know Porter, like, in a lot of these fights, he didn't come out on top, but it's not like he got blown out. Even against Spence, that was a close fight. If Spence never got that knockdown in that exchange of Trump.
His glove touched the floor. If you remember, he did actually knock him down, did he? Didn't he stumble and his glove touched?
Yeah, but that was a knockdown.
Well, they classed it as one, yeah.
But it was a knockdown. That shot, if you look at the shot, he did, and he goes down and his glove touched the floor. That's legally, from the rules perspective, it's a knockdown.
Yeah, by the rules, but I don't know. When you think of a knockdown, you think of like he got caught, he's like gone down.
Oh well, yeah. In that regard, yeah. But like I'm just saying, like I
don't think he's ever been knocked down, has he?
Well, I don't. I'm not sure. I don't think he has, but that knockdown against Spence was very pivotal. Pivotal for Spence, because that technically, up until that point, that it was a close fight. You know, and even when Porter fought Garcia, he got the win there, and he got the world title. When he fought Thurman, Porter's that one guy at 147 pounds that it doesn't matter how you want to fight him. He always gets you into his fight. He just has that come forward football style, American football style that just comes at you. So, I mean, but Terrence Crawford could catch him. He has that mean streak. But I think this is a very, very close, even matchup. I can't lean one way or the other. I mean, if you ask me, if you pull my arm and you tell me to pick somebody, I'm going Porter. I think Porter might take it. What do you think?
It's a very, very, very interesting fight. Like you said, like Sean Porter's never in a dull fight. He always manages, whoever he fights, like when he fought Errol Spence, he manages to drag you into that, you know, just having a war, really just having a war. You know, if the Sean Porter that fought Errol Spence turns up on the night, then I think it's going to be a very close fight. Even though he boxed to like 120, 108 against Sebastian Formella. It was an okay performance. I would have liked to have seen Sean Porter get in there and get rid of him. You know, maybe he knew early on, like, this guy's levels below me. I'm just going to make an easy night's work. I'm just going to go 12 rounds. I'm just going to take it easy, get paid, go home, live to fight another day. It's definitely the best name on Crawford's resume, I believe, so far. Even though, you know, Sean Porter's 35, I think it's probably by far the best opponent he's fought.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Like you said, it's, you know, he's passed the eye test, but he's passed the eye test against lower level fighters. So this is the first test, in my opinion, that we're going to see Crawford, like, because he needs that for me to, you know, people are classing him, you know, like top 3, top 5 on the pound for pound list, but you're like, against who? That's
he doesn't have the resume.
Yeah, that's like saying like somebody that's coming through the ranks and just, you know, beating journeyman. You're like, oh, you know, he passes the eye test. You're like, yeah, but he's fighting journeyman. You know, that's kind of the equivalent, isn't it?
This is a close matchup.
I know. I keep thinking it really depends who shows up on the night. You know, if we see Sean Porter against Errol Spence, then I think it's really, really, really tough. But like you said, it's like one of those things is where I think that dog in Crawford, you know, when he gets into a fight, like when he fought Kowalowskis, and Kowalowskis did drop him, but like legally, it wasn't legally given.
Yeah,
you know,
but that was a knockdown.
Yeah,
what do you agree or disagree with this? That knockdown that wasn't counted against Kowalowskis, where Crawford went down, was that more emphatic than the knockdown that Porter suffered against Spence?
In terms of, for us as fans, like how we look at Crawford and we were like, oh my God, like Crawford's gone down. Like Crawford's kind of human, you know, we all had him as like going in there and he was just going to score Kowalowskis because Kowalowskis really just relied on, you know, strength and power, had a very limited, you know, boxing IQ. But what I was going to touch on is like, once you kind of annoy Crawford, he has that dog in him and he has that spite. So I do think, you know, if, you know, Sean Porter starts really well, kind of annoys him, starts racking up a few rounds or even rocks him or drops him, Crawford just goes to like another place and he just comes back an absolute beast. And for me, because he's facing the best person on his resume so far, if I was Crawford, it would be unreal if he made a statement and either dropped or stopped Porter. And then we're kind of all of us, I think everybody in the media can be like, yeah, that's it. He deserves his place in top 3 or top 5. Because like you said, nobody does that to Porter. Nobody.
Right, yeah. Porter's never really been close to being stopped like that. So if he beats him on a decision, especially if it's a clear decision, that, you know, he obviously deserves credit. I think either way, you know, I think he's going to have a tough time. Everybody who's fought Porter has had a tough time. Even guys like Spence, Garcia, Thurman. Like I mentioned, repeating what I said, Porter always brings you into his fight. It's just that he takes you into the trenches. Even if you don't want to go in with him, he takes you in there, which is crazy. So like you said, if Crawford's able to stop him, that's going to be a huge statement. And, I don't want to hear, saying, oh, Porter's already have too much mileage. He's already been done because he's been in all these wars. It doesn't count. I mean, I don't know. Unless Porter is has a visible injury, like when Sergio Martinez fought Miguel Cotto and he had those big old shorts and that knee brace to try to cover it. Unless it's something like that, then, I mean, it is what it is. But assuming everything's fine and Porter just gets stopped, or he loses or he gets stopped, that's going to be a huge statement. And I think Crawford knows that. I think Crawford knows, okay, not only do I need to win, but if I stop him, that's huge. And Crawford arguably has the meanest streak in boxing when he has you hurt. Arguably he has it. Arguably. Definitely top 2 or 3, definitely for sure.
And he's putting himself in the shop window. He already has a WBO title. This is his last fight on the top rank. So if I was him, he's got double the motivation, right? I'm sure he's already had offers from PBC and, everybody else. But if he go in there and annihilates Sean Porter, that could add a couple more mil on that contract, right?
No, that's true too. But don't you think that even if Crawford loses, he's still a free agent? You don't think that Al Heyman would make him an offer? Or does Al Heyman not want to do business with MTK?
I think he just likes to keep the money himself, doesn't he? Because he likes to do internal fights. So
well, I know that, but you got to remember that Terrence Crawford is now advised by MTK Global.
Yeah, I mean, everyone seems to be going over there, right? Obviously, there must be
pro bellum. Yeah,
they must be paying well or taking a very low percent in management fees for people to, everyone seems to be going over there. They're doing something right. Probably best not touch on anything else to do with them, but they're doing something right.
But I mean, don't you think that Crawford, even if he's on the losing end, for example, Al Heyman makes him an offer? He's like, oh yeah, we'll just come fight for PBC. Because then he just adds him to the mix. Like, oh, okay, put you against Garcia, put you against Ugas or something like that. And Al Heyman, PBC, keeps the money in-house, just like every promoter likes to do.
Well, Uncle Al loves that,
Yeah. I mean, even if Crawford wins, obviously it helps him regardless. It helps him. He adds a little bit more money to his stock and to his resume. And he has a chance to be signed or to go with Al Heyman and really get a full-fledged fight with Spence, unification matchup and stuff like that. But even if he's on the losing end, he's still on the concluding steps of his contract with Top Rank, and it really doesn't seem like he's going to resign, whether he wins or loses, right?
It's I watched the Boxing Social podcast today with Andy Clark, and Rob Tebbett said he thinks that he'll stay with Top Rank. So in your opinion, if he stays with Top Rank, does that show a lack of motivation to unify or even become undisputed? And would you look kind of down on Terrence Crawford for not going across there and taking the risk and the chance?
Well, yeah. I mean, how much millions has he made now? He's obviously financially secure, big time, for the rest of his life. He should be, at least. He's made millions of dollars in the last fights, fighting not so big names, not fighting Spence, Porter, Ugas, Garcia's, Pacquiao, and stuff like that. So why not bust a Canelo and go either become a free agent do a fight-by-fight basis? I mean, he obviously has the talent. Do a fight-by-fight basis, get the biggest payday that you can get, which is probably going to be a lot of fights with PBC, or sign a short-term deal with Al Heyman and PBC. He has all the best welterweights in that stable, or leave and sign a one-fight deal with DAZN, fight Virgil Ortiz. I don't know. I'd be surprised if he resigns with ESPN and Top Rank. I really would, because especially after fighting Porter, and if he beats Porter, I'd be very surprised. I'd be very surprised, especially for the tension that was in that relationship within the last 2 years or so, with Bob Arum making those comments about Crawford that he loses money on him and this and that. And, unless that was just for like marketing or promotional politics, I mean, I just don't see him re-signing with Top Rank. I don't, unless they throw a big pile of cash at him that he's just like, okay, I can't turn that down. But even then, it's just like, dude, like you've made a ton of money. Obviously, you want to make more. Nobody's hating on that, but you're arguably, we'll know more after Saturday, but you're arguably the best fighter in that division, possibly the number 2 fighter in the world, behind Canelo Alvarez. Why don't you go? Because he's getting older. He's in his mid 30s. Go to PBC, clean out their division. Imagine if he did, and in like a year and a half's time or something, he fights Spence, Garcia, Ugas, and he beats them all. Imagine in 2 or 3 years' time, we're like, oh my gosh, he's the real deal. Like, look at that. He did it. Imagine what that would do to his legacy. Just imagine that. I don't know. I don't think he resigns with Top Rank. I don't think he does, but you think he does?
From what we used to hear, obviously from Bob, when Bob's openly saying about how they're losing money on his fights, because I think he had like a 5 million minimum or something like that, and obviously didn't work out in terms of how many fans he was putting in seats and how well the pay-per-views were doing. No, it seems like Bob's really there, like very old school. He wants to take a big slice of the pie. So we'll see. Maybe I'm sure the PBC want him to. They've got a real stranglehold on that 147 division, so it makes sense for them to snap him up. So we'll see.
Yeah, but I mean, kind of tying a bow on this conversation, I'm really looking forward to this fight this weekend. ESPN Plus pay-per-view, Terrence Crawford, Sean Porter for the WBO welterweight world title. I'm really looking forward to this fight. I'm excited, and I hope it should deliver, because a lot of fights with Porter, and a lot of fights that Porter's been in, especially against these elite guys, they're very exciting. So I'm definitely looking forward to this fight from the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. Rounding off the show, news and notes. Breaking news. It just happened earlier today. We're recording this on Tuesday. This happened earlier today, Tuesday, November. What are we at? November 16th. The WBC is having their annual convention in Mexico City, Mexico. Eddie Reynoso, head trainer of Saul Canelo Alvarez, was there and formally made a request to the WBC. It seems like it's like their board of directors or something like that, in front of everybody, in front of the cameras, in front of the crowd, the audience that was there. He made a request to have Canelo challenge the WBC world champion at Cruiserweight. I believe it's Yunga Makabu, who's 28-2 with 25 KOs. Canelo is hoping to fight him in May or June of next year. They conducted a vote between the WBC board of directors right there on the spot. And I don't know if it was unanimous or the majority, but they all voted to give Canelo the approval to move up to Cruiserweight and fight Makabu for the Cruiserweight WBC World Championship, which is a ridiculous move. He's moved up to light heavyweight for Sergey Kovalev. He's fought these big guys. Cruiserweight, I don't know who expected that, but we did tweet out yesterday, the day before this news broke at the WBC convention in Mexico City. We did tweet out a picture of Makabu's BoxRec screenshot. And we did get a pretty decent discussion going on Twitter that Canelo should move up to Cruiserweight and challenge Makabu for the WBC World Championship. We also put in the tweet that Makabu is shorter than one of Canelo's previous opponents in Callum Smith, and Callum Smith has a longer reach than Makabu. I mean, what do you think about that?
Obviously, Makabu is going to come in there, heavier. He's the more natural fighter at that weight category. Canelo, I would say, is a lot more skilled. He's very used to fighting bigger opponents. Maccabi, obviously, a lot of people know him from obviously getting beaten by Tony Bellew. It's an interesting fight, and I honestly think Canelo might pull it off.
I think he sees something in it. That's why he wouldn't take the risk if he doesn't see something in it. If he doesn't see a potential to win. In that regard, I'm saying. In that regard,
no, definitely. He's doing that thing that a lot of fighters do now, like where they look around, the divisions, that they can probably move up to or move down to. They look for the weakest link, and they try to get a world title in that category and then move on. He kind of did that thing, obviously to Kovalev. Kovalev didn't have too much time between fights. He's obviously older. A lot of people know that he doesn't take the sport as seriously as he used to, back in the day. Canelo saw that, thought, I've got a good chance of beating this guy. Went in there, did it.
Kovalev's moving up to Cruiserweight too. They announced it at the WBC convention.
Rematch.
You never know. But yeah, I think that's ridiculous. Like that shows you the balls that Canelo Alvarez has, going up to Cruiserweight, even though he's fighting potentially one of the weaker champions. You never know, man. You never know. I mean, boxing, just like we keep talking about, the theme of this episode is upsets. Baumgardner, Chico Martinez. What if Makabu just too strong, catches him with one shot? Canelo's like, this is not what I thought. I mean, Canelo's, if anybody can do it, it's Canelo Alvarez, but who knows? Who knows how we go there and how it works out. But yeah, I was definitely surprised about that. I think I mentioned just before we came on air, it was funny that Eddie Reynoso was going up to the microphone to address the WBC panel, the board of directors, I believe. And Samson Lukowitz of Samson Boxing, who promotes David Benavidez, interrupted Eddie Reynoso when Eddie Reynoso started talking and hugged Eddie Reynoso and told the story. He's like, if I can I tell a story about Eddie? Eddie's such a great guy. It was funny to see Samson so happy because he's like, oh, well, my guy's probably going to fight Canelo, David Benavidez. That's why I'm here. They're going to order it. Yeah, he's so happy, going to get paydays. We're all going to get paid. And then he hears Eddie Reynoso say, hey, we're requesting to get a title shot against the WBC champ at Cruiserweight. And you see Samson, if you watch the video, you see Samson kind of, his body language changes. He crosses his arms. He's like, what the hell? And then when Eddie Reynoso gets the approval and they give him, they're like, okay, yeah, you approve. We voted. You can make that fight if you want. When Eddie Reynoso turns around to walk away, Samson grabs him all seriously. And he's like, you're going to fight? Who are you going to fight? And then Eddie Reynoso, you can hear him tell him in Spanish. He was like, yeah, at Cruiserweight. Because he's like, Samson's like, which weight? And Eddie Reynoso's like, at Cruiserweight. He's like, what? And then Samson goes to the microphone and he talks about hey, well, David Benavidez should get the interim title, to pretty much still keep him in that spot to get a Canelo shot later on. And then it got to the point where Samson kept talking on the microphone and Mauricio Suleiman, the president of the WBC, finally told him to sit down. He's like, can you please just go sit down? He's like, I'm running this meeting. If our listeners, if you don't know about that situation, go back and watch it. It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny. Then it's pretty funny when Mauricio Suleiman just tells him to sit down. He's like, Samson, I'm running this meeting. Can you please just go sit down? It was hilarious. But that match isn't approved. I've seen a lot of outlets already writing about it. It's Canelo got that fight and this and that. It's already announced and Canelo moving up to Cruiserweight to fight this guy. That's not true. They got approval to fight him. Their request was granted to fight him. Now they have to negotiate and see if they actually follow through with it. So it's not official. They got the official approval from the sanctioning body, but it's not official that he's going to move up. He could change his mind between now and, March or April. He could change his mind and be like, oh, well, now I kind of want to stay at 168 or 175. This fight just popped up. You never know. And who's going to promote that fight? I think Makabu was actually, before we came on, I saw an interview with Little Giant Boxing, who's been on the show before, Constantino. He interviewed Makabu, I think, in Mexico City. He get his immediate reaction, and he asked him about Don King. He's like, "Oh, what does Don King think about this?" Which I assumed means that Makabu is promoted by Don King. But then Makabu was just like, "Oh, forget about Don King." So I'm assuming there's like issues there. So as of right now, I don't know who promotes him. I don't know if it's Don King, but they're obviously going to need a major promoter and a television broadcast partner in the United States. And you don't think Eddie Hearn and Showtime are going to make a big push if Canelo fights this guy, especially if he fights him in Mexico City? You don't think they're going to make a big push to get that on U.S. television or DAZN? I think that's going to happen. But thank you again, guys, for listening to this week's episode of The Last Round. As we're signing off here, don't forget that we have merchandise available. We have shirts and sweaters at the Fit Warrior brand website. That link is in our social media handles, in our link tree, which has a bunch of our links to support us, to check out our stuff. If you can support us and buy some shirts and buy some sweaters, tweet us, send us a message if you have some, and we'll give you a shout out. But as we sign off here for this week's episode of The Last Round, Mike, go ahead and let our fans where they can find us and follow us.
We're at The Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter. And be sure to join us next week. We'll be reviewing the Terence Crawford and Sean Porter fight, and then previewing the multi-arranged Teofimo Lopez against George Kambosos Jr.
So once again, for my co-host, Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. This is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This